The cantina on Nexus Prime was filled with smoke and the sounds of different alien languages mixing together. In the back corner, away from the noise, sat a large reptilian creature with 4 arms and dark green scales. His name was Kale Vorthak, and he was drinking something that glowed blue in his glass. Across from him sat a human woman with short black hair and tired eyes. Her name was Gina, and she worked as a war reporter. Next to her, a young human man named Hyun was setting up a small recording device. The device's red light blinked, showing it was ready to record. "Thank you for agreeing to this interview, Commander Vorthak," Gina said, her voice steady and professional. "I know you don't usually talk to reporters." Kyle's 4 eyes looked at her with something that might have been amusement. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "I am retired now. Just call me Kale, and you are correct. I do not speak to your kind often." Hyun finished checking his equipment and nodded to Gina. She opened her notebook and looked at her first question. "Let's start simple," she said. "You served in the Galactic Alliance military for 30 years. You fought in 7 major conflicts before the Human War. What made the Human War different?" Kyle took a long drink from his glass. Around them, other aliens in the cantina continued their conversations, but some were starting to look toward their table. Word was spreading that the famous Kale Vorthak was here. "Different," Kale repeated, his voice thoughtful. "Yes, it was different. In my other wars, I fought rational enemies, enemies who wanted resources or territory or power, enemies who understood when they were beaten." He paused and looked out the cantina's large window at the stars beyond. "Humans were not rational enemies." Gina leaned forward. This was already more than most alien veterans would say about the war. "What do you mean by not rational?" "I mean they did not follow the rules," Kale said. "In war, there are rules. Not written rules, but natural rules. When you are outnumbered, you retreat. When you are surrounded, you surrender. When you are beaten, you negotiate. Humans did none of these things." A blue-skinned alien at a nearby table had stopped talking to his friends. He was staring at Kyle with wide eyes. Gina noticed this, but kept her attention on the interview. "Can you give me an example?" she asked. Kale's scales seemed to shift slightly, changing to a darker shade of green. This was a sign of stress in his species, though Gina didn't know this. "The Battle of Kepler 442, he said quietly. "It should have been simple. We had 3 full fleets. They had 1 damaged cruiser and maybe 50 fighters. Any logical species would have surrendered immediately. But they didn't. They attacked us," Kyle said, and his voice carried a note of old confusion. "1 damaged cruiser attacked 3 fleets, and they kept attacking until there was nothing left of their ship. We thought they were malfunctioning. We thought their computers had broken and they couldn't understand the odds." Hyun's recording device captured every word. He had been ready for a standard war story, but something in Kale's voice made him pay closer attention. "Later," Kale continued, "we learned that their captain had sent a message to his crew before the attack. He told them they could not win. He told them they would all die. Then he asked for volunteers to stay and fight while the escape pods launched. Gina's pen stopped moving. And every single crew member volunteered to stay, Cale said. The escape pods launched empty. They all chose to die fighting instead of living as prisoners. The blue-skinned alien at the nearby table had gone very still. His friends noticed and turned to look at Cale as well. The conversations around them were getting quieter. "That must have been shocking," Gina said. "Shocking," Cale repeated. "Yes, but we told ourselves it was just one ship, one crazy crew. We thought it was unusual." He finished his drink and signaled for another. The cantina's server, a multi-armed creature covered in fur, brought him a fresh glass. The server's movements were respectful, almost fearful. "But it wasn't just one ship, was it?" Gina asked. "No," Kyle said. "It was all of them. Every human military unit we fought. Every human civilian settlement we attacked. They all fought like they had nothing to lose and everything to prove." More aliens in the cantina were listening now. Some had moved to tables closer to Cale. Veterans, Gina realized. She could tell by the way they sat, the way they watched, the old wounds and missing limbs that marked soldiers from many species. "You commanded the 47th Shock Division," Gina said, reading from her notes. "One of the Alliance's most decorated units. Surely experienced soldiers like yours could handle unusual enemy tactics?" Cale's laugh was harsh and bitter. "Experience. Yes, we had experience fighting normal enemies. We knew how to break supply lines, how to target command structures, how to force surrenders through logical pressure." He took another drink. "None of that worked on humans. Cut their supply lines and they would make weapons from garbage. Kill their officers and their sergeants would take command. Destroy their equipment and they would fight with rocks and metal bars." "That sounds like desperation," Gina suggested. "No," Cale said, and his voice was firm. "Desperation is what you do when you have no choice. Humans had choices. They always had choices. They could have surrendered. They could have negotiated. They could have run away. They chose to fight instead." A scarred alien veteran at a corner table raised his glass toward Cale. It was a gesture of respect, soldier to soldier. Cale nodded back. "The worst part," Cale continued, "was that they were not just fighting for themselves. They fought for each other, for their families, for people they had never met, for ideas that you could not touch or count or measure." Gina was writing as fast as she could. What kind of ideas? Freedom, justice, honor, duty. Kyle spoke each word like it tasted strange in his mouth. These words meant more to humans than food or water or air, more than their own lives. Hyun checked his recording device. Still working, still capturing everything. "In our military academies," Kyle said, "we study efficient warfare, how to win with the least cost in time, resources, and lives. Human warfare was the opposite. They would spend everything, time, resources, lives, for the smallest chance of victory." The cantina had become very quiet now. Even aliens who didn't speak the common language seemed to understand that something important was being said. "I have fought many wars," Kyle said, looking directly at Gina. I have seen species fight for survival, for territory, for resources. These are things I understand. But humans fought for things that existed only in their minds. And they were willing to die for these invisible things. Gina looked up from her notebook. That frightened you? Kyle was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the cantina waited. Yes, he said finally. It frightened me. It frightened all of us. Because if someone is willing to die for an idea, how do you defeat that idea? How do you fight an enemy who becomes stronger when you hurt them? He gestured to Hyun's recording device. You want to know about the human war? Then you must understand this. We did not lose because humans were stronger than us. We lost because we could not understand what made them fight. And what you cannot understand, you cannot defeat. The cantina remained silent as Kale finished speaking. Gina realized that this interview was going to be much more than she had expected. Tell me more, she said quietly. The cantina on Nexus Prime was filled with smoke and the sounds of different alien languages mixing together. In the back corner, away from the noise, sat a large reptilian creature with 4 arms and dark green scales. His name was Kyle Vorthak, and he was drinking something that glowed blue in his glass. Across from him sat a human woman with short black hair and tired eyes. Her name was Gina, and she worked as a war reporter. Next to her, a young human man named Hyun was setting up a small recording device. The device's red light blinked, showing it was ready to record. Thank you for agreeing to this interview, Commander Vorthak, Gina said, her voice steady and professional. I know you don't usually talk to reporters. Kale's 4 eyes looked at her with something that might have been amusement. His voice was deep and rough like rocks grinding together. I am retired now. Just call me Kale, and you are correct. I do not speak to your kind often. Hyun finished checking his equipment and nodded to Gina. She opened her notebook and looked at her first question. Let's start simple, she said. You served in the Galactic Alliance military for 30 years. You fought in 7 major conflicts before the human war. What made the human war different? Kale took a long drink from his glass. Around them, other aliens in the cantina continued their conversations, but some were starting to look toward their table. Word was spreading that the famous Kyle Vorthak was here. Different, Kyle repeated, his voice thoughtful. Yes, it was different. In my other wars, I fought rational enemies. Enemies who wanted resources or territory or power. Enemies who understood when they were beaten. He paused and looked out the cantina's large window at the stars beyond. Humans were not rational enemies. Gina leaned forward. This was already more than most alien veterans would say about the war. What do you mean by not rational? I mean they did not follow the rules, Kale said. In war, there are rules. Not written rules, but natural rules. When you are outnumbered, you retreat. When you are surrounded, you surrender. When you are beaten, you negotiate. Humans did none of these things. A blue-skinned alien at a nearby table had stopped talking to his friends. He was staring at Kale with wide eyes. Gina noticed this but kept her attention on the interview. Can you give me an example? She asked. Kale's scales seemed to shift slightly, changing to a darker shade of green. This was a sign of stress in his species, though Gina didn't know this. "The Battle of Kepler 442, he said quietly. "It should have been simple. We had 3 full fleets. They had 1 damaged cruiser and maybe 50 fighters. Any logical species would have surrendered immediately. But they didn't? They attacked us," Cale said, and his voice carried a note of old confusion. 1 damaged cruiser attacked 3 fleets, and they kept attacking until there was nothing left of their ship. We thought they were malfunctioning. We thought their computers had broken, and they couldn't understand the odds. Hyun's recording device captured every word. He had been ready for a standard war story, but something in Cale's voice made him pay closer attention. Later, Cale continued, "We learned that their captain had sent a message to his crew before the attack. He told them they could not win. He told them they would all die. Then he asked for volunteers to stay and fight while the escape pods launched." Gina's pen stopped moving. "And?" "Every single crew member volunteered to stay," Kyle said. "The escape pods launched empty. They all chose to die fighting instead of living as prisoners." The blue-skinned alien at the nearby table had gone very still. His friends noticed and turned to look at Cale as well. The conversations around them were getting quieter. "That must have been shocking," Gina said. "Shocking," Cale repeated. "Yes. But we told ourselves it was just 1 ship, 1 crazy crew. We thought it was unusual." He finished his drink and signaled for another. The cantina's server, a multi-armed creature covered in fur, brought him a fresh glass. The server's movements were respectful, almost fearful. "But it wasn't just 1 ship, was it?" Gina asked. "No," Cale said. "It was all of them. Every human military unit we fought. Every human civilian settlement we attacked. They all fought like they had nothing to lose and everything to prove." More aliens in the cantina were listening now. Some had moved to tables closer to Kyle. Veterans, Gina realized. She could tell by the way they sat, the way they watched, the old wounds and missing limbs that marked soldiers from any species. "You commanded the 47th Shock Division," Gina said, reading from her notes. "One of the Alliance's most decorated units. Surely experienced soldiers like yours could handle unusual enemy tactics?" Cale's laugh was harsh and bitter. "Experience. Yes, we had experience fighting normal enemies. We knew how to break supply lines, how to target command structures, how to force surrenders through logical pressure." He took another drink. "None of that worked on humans. Cut their supply lines, and they would make weapons from garbage. Kill their officers, and their sergeants would take command. Destroy their equipment, and they would fight with rocks and metal bars." "That sounds like desperation," Gina suggested. "No," Kyle said, and his voice was firm. "Desperation is what you do when you have no choice. Humans had choices. They always had choices. They could have surrendered. They could have negotiated. They could have run away. They chose to fight instead." A scarred alien veteran at a corner table raised his glass toward Kyle. It was a gesture of respect, soldier to soldier. Cale nodded back. "The worst part," Cale continued, "was that they were not just fighting for themselves. They fought for each other, for their families, for people they had never met. for ideas that you could not touch or count or measure. Gina was writing as fast as she could. What kind of ideas? Freedom, justice, honor, duty. Cale spoke each word like it tasted strange in his mouth. These words meant more to humans than food or water or air, more than their own lives. Hyun checked. His recording device, still working, still capturing everything. In our military academies, Cale said, we study efficient warfare. How to win with the least cost in time, resources, and lives. Human warfare was the opposite. They would spend everything, time, resources, lives, for the smallest chance of victory. The cantina had become very quiet now. Even aliens who didn't speak the common language seemed to understand that something important was being said. I have fought many wars, Cale said, looking directly at Gina. I have seen species fight for survival, for territory, for resources. These are things I understand. But humans fought for things that existed only in their minds, and they were willing to die for these invisible things. Gina looked up from her notebook. That frightened you? Cale was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the cantina waited. Yes, he said finally. It frightened me. It frightened all of us. Because if someone is willing to die for an idea, how do you defeat that idea? How do you fight an enemy who becomes stronger when you hurt them? He gestured to Han's recording device. You want to know about the human war? Then you must understand this. We did not lose because humans were stronger than us. We lost because we could not understand what made them fight, and what you cannot understand. You cannot defeat. The cantina remained silent as Cale finished speaking. Gina realized that this interview was going to be much more than she had expected. Tell me more, she said quietly. Cale ordered another drink and sat quietly for a moment. The cantina remained silent, with aliens from many different species listening to his every word. Some had fought in the human war themselves. Others had only heard stories. New Soul taught us that humans fight differently, Cale said finally. But it was at Harmony Ridge where we learned that humans think differently. About enemies. About war itself. Gina looked up from her notebook. Harmony Ridge? A planet with nothing valuable on it. Just rock and ice and a few mining stations. We attacked it because it was on the supply route to human core worlds. Easy target, we thought. Take it quick. Use it as a base for bigger attacks. Cale's 4 hands wrapped around his glass. The battle lasted 3 days. Standard engagement. Our forces against their defenders. We won, obviously. We had better weapons and more soldiers. But what happened after the battle? That changed everything. What happened? Hyun asked, speaking for the first time during the interview. We set up a medical station for our wounded soldiers, Cale said. Standard procedure. Take care of your own first, then deal with prisoners if you have time and resources. Simple military logic. He paused, his scales shifting to a darker color. The humans had a medical station, too, in a damaged building about half a kilometer from ours. We planned to destroy it during our next advance. But something went wrong? Gina asked. Something went right, Cale said. Too right. Our intelligence was incorrect about human troop positions. When we attacked their medical station, we found it was not a military target. The alien veteran who had joined them earlier leaned forward from his table. You were at Harmony Ridge? I heard about what happened there. Even the High Command talked about it. Kale nodded. Dr. Bin was the human in charge of their medical station. Old man, maybe 60 years old. He had gray hair and wore glasses that were held together with tape. Not a soldier. Just a doctor. Just a doctor, Gina repeated. Just a doctor treating wounded humans and aliens together, Kale said. When we overran their position, Dr. Bin did not run. He did not fight. He kept working on his patients. Kale's voice became very quiet. Some of his patients were our soldiers. Several aliens in the cantina made sounds of surprise. Even species that had never fought humans seemed shocked by this. Your soldiers? Gina asked. He was treating enemy? Wounded? Yes. 3 of my soldiers had been captured during the first day of fighting. They were wounded, and the humans had brought them to their medical station. Dr. Bin was operating on one of them when we arrived. That makes no sense, the veteran said. Medical supplies are always limited in combat. You use them on your own people first. That is what we thought too, Kale said. But Dr. Bin explained that he was a doctor first, before he was human or military or anything else. He said all wounded soldiers were just patients to him. Gina's pen had stopped moving. He said that while you were attacking his station. He said that while artillery shells were falling around us, Kale corrected. My forces were bombing the area, and Dr. Bin was trying to keep his patients stable during the explosions. Human, patients and alien patients both. What did you do? Kale was quiet for a long moment. I ordered my soldiers to stop shooting. I thought Dr. Bin was insane, but I wanted to understand what he was doing. And? He was saving lives, human and alien lives with equal care. He had a young assistant, a nurse named Day. She was maybe 20 years old, barely more than a child. She was holding plasma tubes steady while the building shook from explosions. Kyle took a drink. Nurse Day was crying, but she was not crying from fear. She was crying because one of our soldiers, one of the enemies, had died during surgery. She was sad that she could not save him. The cantina was so quiet that the only sound was the hum of the space station's air recyclers. I have been a soldier for 30 years, Kyle said. I have seen every kind of combat, every kind of enemy, but I had never seen enemies weep for my dead soldiers. What happened next? Gina asked. More bombing. Our artillery crews did not know we had captured the medical station. They kept firing at the coordinates. Dr. Bin asked me to help him move the patients to a safer area. He asked you to help? Me, personally. The enemy commander. He asked me to help him save wounded soldiers from both sides. Kyle shook his head. I should have said no. I should have left him to deal with his own problems. But you didn't? I helped him move the patients. My soldiers helped too. We carried wounded humans and wounded aliens to a basement that had thicker walls. We worked together during an active bombing to save lives. Yun was checking his recording device again, making sure it was capturing this impossible story. There, was a human captain named Nara. Kyle continued. She had been wounded in the first day of fighting. Broken ribs, internal bleeding, very serious injuries. Dr. Bin had operated on her, saved her life. One of their officers? Yes. But when the bombing started, Captain Nara got out of her medical bed and started helping to move wounded aliens to safety. She was carrying our soldiers to the basement while she was still injured herself. The veteran at the nearby table stood up and walked over again. Permission to join this conversation? I need to hear this story. Cale gestured to an empty chair. You are welcome. These are stories that should be told. The veteran sat down. I am Vex, formerly of the 23rd Engineering Corps. I heard rumors about Harmony Ridge, but never the full story. The full story is difficult to believe, Cale said. Captain Nara was carrying one of your wounded soldiers when a shell hit the building above us. The ceiling started to collapse. And she covered our soldier with her own body, used herself as a shield to protect an enemy from falling debris. The debris broke her arm, but our soldier survived. Vex stared at Cale. She protected an enemy soldier with her own body, while she was already wounded? Yes. And when I asked her why, she said it was because he could not protect himself. She said that in medical areas, there are no enemies. Only patients who need help. Gina was writing furiously, trying to capture every detail. How did the other humans react? They all acted the same way, Kyle said. All of them. The medical staff, the wounded soldiers, even the guards. They treated our people like they were human. Like family, Vex said quietly. Exactly like family. Dr. Bin spent 4 hours operating on one of my sergeants. 4 hours of careful surgery to save the life of an enemy. His own people were still fighting and dying outside, but he used his time and supplies to save our soldier. Instead, that should have made you angry, Gina said. It did make me angry, Cale admitted, but it also made me confused. In our military training, we learn that enemies will try to trick you with false kindness. But this was not false. Dr. Bin really cared about saving our soldiers. How could you tell? Because he cried when one of them died. An old doctor crying for a dead enemy soldier. No one cries fake tears for 4 hours during combat. Vex nodded slowly. Our psychologists had theories about human behavior, but they never predicted anything like this. The worst part came later, Kyle said, when the bombing stopped and we prepared to move our forces forward. Dr. Bin asked us to take the wounded aliens with us. He wanted you to take your own soldiers. He wanted us to take them to proper military hospitals where they could get better care. He said his equipment was too basic for serious surgeries. He was worried that our soldiers would not recover properly with his limited supplies. Gina looked up from her notebook. He was concerned about the quality of medical care he could give to enemy soldiers? Yes. And he gave us detailed medical reports for each wounded alien, instructions for their care, recommendations for treatment, notes about their injuries and recovery progress, like they were his own patients that he was transferring to specialist doctors. That is impossible, Vex said. Medical reports for enemy soldiers? Why would he waste time writing medical reports for people he would never see again? Because he was a doctor, Kyle said simply. And doctors apparently care about all their patients, even enemy patients. What did your commanders think about this? Gina asked. They ordered a full investigation. They thought it was some kind of psychological warfare. Make us feel guilty or confused, so we would make mistakes in future battles. Was it? No, it was just humans being human. We investigated Dr. Bin's background, his training, his history. He was exactly what he appeared to be. An old doctor who cared about saving lives more than winning wars. Cale finished his drink. 3 months later, I received a message through diplomatic channels. Dr. Bin was asking about the recovery progress of our wounded soldiers. He wanted to know if they were healing properly. The enemy doctor was checking on your soldiers? Vex asked. The human doctor was checking on his former patients, Kyle corrected, because that is how humans think. Once they take care of you, you become their responsibility, forever. That must have been disturbing for your military leadership, Gina said. It was terrifying, Cale said, because it meant that every human medical facility was a potential source of psychological warfare, not intentional warfare, just humans. Being kind to enemies, and kindness, we learned, is much harder to fight than hatred. Why? Hyun asked. Cale gestured to the cantina server for another round of drinks. The alien veteran Vex had settled into his chair, clearly planning to stay for the rest of the interview. Around them, other aliens continued to listen quietly. Harmony Ridge taught us that humans were unpredictable, Cale said. But it was at Frost 7 where we learned that humans were impossible. Frost 7? Gina asked. Ice planet. Nothing there but mining stations and weather that could kill you in minutes without proper protection. We needed it as a staging area for attacks on human industrial worlds. Kyle paused as the server brought fresh drinks. The planet should have been easy to take. Minimal human presence, just some mining operations and a small military outpost. We sent a standard occupation force, 3,000 soldiers, heavy equipment, orbital support. That sounds like massive overkill for a mining planet, Gina said. It was massive overkill, Vex agreed. 3,000 troops could conquer most colony worlds. The humans had 12 soldiers guarding the mountain pass that led to their main mining complex, Cale said. 12 soldiers. They called themselves Echo Squad. Hyun adjusted his recording equipment. 12 against 3,000? 12 against 3,000, Cale confirmed. Their sergeant was a human named Kang, maybe 30 years old, average height, nothing special about him. He looked like any other human soldier. But he wasn't average? None of them were average, but we did not know that at first. We sent a standard surrender demand to Echo Squad, told them they were outnumbered, cut off from help, and would be destroyed if they did not surrender immediately. Cale took a drink. Sergeant Kang sent back a reply. He thanked us for the warning and said Echo Squad would take our suggestion under consideration. That sounds reasonable, Gina said. It sounded reasonable. But his next message was less reasonable. He said that Echo Squad had voted, and they had decided to decline our surrender offer. He suggested that we find another route to the mining complex. Vex laughed, but it was not a happy sound. 12 humans telling 3,000 aliens to find another route. Exactly. We thought it was a joke or a malfunction in their communications. So we ignored them and sent our advance units toward the pass. What happened? The advance units never made it through the pass. Echo Squad had spent their time preparing defensive positions. They used the ice and snow and mountain terrain like weapons. Kale's scales darkened as he remembered. They had dug caves and tunnels in the ice, set up crossfire positions that covered every approach to the pass, prepared avalanche charges that could bury our vehicles. 12 soldiers did all that? Gina asked. 12 soldiers working like they had nothing else to do for the rest of their lives. They had turned the mountain pass into a death trap, and they knew exactly how to use it. But surely 3,000 soldiers could overwhelm 12 defenders, even in good positions? You would think so, Kale said. We thought so too. We sent wave after wave of attacks. Each attack cost us dozens of soldiers. Each attack was stopped by these 12 humans who refused to give up their positions. Vex nodded. I heard about Echo Squad. My unit was scheduled to be sent to Frost 7 as reinforcements, but the reinforcements kept getting delayed because Command thought the occupation would be finished quickly. It was supposed to take 3 days, Kale said. It took 43 days. 43 days? Gina looked up from her notes. 12 soldiers held off 3,000 for over a month? 43 days of continuous combat. Every day we attacked. Every day they fought back. Every day we expected them to run out of ammunition or food or hope. What kept them going? I asked Sergeant Kang that question during one of our daily radio conversations. Daily radio conversations? Hyun asked. Yes. Every morning at 800, Sergeant Kang would contact us on an open channel. He would give us a weather report, update us on Echo Squad's status, and ask about our supply situation. Kale's voice carried a note of old amazement. He was always polite, always professional, like we were having normal military communications instead of 43 days of desperate combat. That must have been psychological warfare, Gina suggested. That is what we thought at first. But as the days went on, we realized Sergeant Kang was genuinely concerned about our welfare. He warned us about bad weather that could endanger our troops. He told us when avalanche conditions were dangerous. He even suggested better camping positions for our forces. Vex stared at Kale. The enemy was giving you tactical advice? The enemy was treating us like fellow soldiers who happened to be on opposite sides of a disagreement. Sergeant Kang never seemed to hate us. He just would not let us pass through his mountain. What about his soldiers? How did they handle such a long siege? That was the strangest part. We had equipment to monitor their communications. We could hear them talking to each other during quiet periods between battles. Kyle paused to drink. They were not talking about surrender or escape or how hopeless their situation was. They were talking about their families back home, about movies they wanted to see, about what they would do after the war ended. After the war ended? Gina asked. They thought they would survive? They thought they would win, Kale said. Not just survive the siege, but win the entire war. 12 soldiers trapped in a mountain pass, facing impossible odds, and they were making plans for victory celebrations. That sounds like madness. It sounded like madness to us, too. But they were not mad. They were just human. And humans apparently do not understand the concept of hopeless situations. An old alien at a corner table called out, "Tell them about Private Soul." Kyle looked toward the alien who had spoken. "You were at Frost 7? Transport pilot. I flew supply runs to your forces. I remember the reports about the young human." Kyle nodded. "Private Soul? Youngest member of Echo Squad, maybe 19 years old. During our intelligence monitoring, we learned that it was his first combat assignment. A teenager? A teenager who learned to be a soldier during the siege. In our early attacks, we could hear him on their communications, scared, confused, asking for guidance from his sergeant." "That sounds normal for a young recruit," Gina said. It was normal, but by the end of the siege, Private Saul was leading counterattacks against our positions. Scared teenager became a dangerous warrior in 43 days of combat. "How?" "Sergeant Kang trained him. During combat, between battles, Kang would teach Soul new tactics, new weapons handling, new survival techniques. The sergeant turned the siege into a training exercise for his youngest soldier." Vex shook his head. "Using active combat as military training? That should have gotten them all killed. It made them better fighters." By the 4th week, Echo Squad was more dangerous than they had been at the beginning. They were learning from every battle, adapting to our tactics, improving their positions. "What about their supplies?" Gina asked. 12 soldiers must have run out of food and ammunition quickly." "They should have. But they had a demolitions expert, Corporal Minho. He was very creative with explosives." "Creative how?" Minho learned. "To make ammunition from mining equipment. He turned ice and rock into weapons. He created explosive charges from materials we did not even know were dangerous." The transport pilot at the corner table called out again. "Tell them about the ice bombs." "Ice bombs," Kale repeated. Corporal Minho filled containers with water and metal fragments, then let them freeze in the extreme cold. When they exploded, they sent sharp ice pieces in all directions. "Weaponized ice!" "Weaponized everything." Minho turned the environment itself into ammunition. Our soldiers started to fear the mountain itself, not just the humans defending it. "How did the siege finally end?" Heon asked. "Orders from High Command. After 6 weeks, our generals decided that Frost 7 was not worth the cost. We had lost over 400 soldiers trying to get past 12 humans. So Echo Squad won? Echo Squad achieved their objective. They kept us from reaching the mining complex. But more importantly, they proved something that our military had not wanted to believe." "What?" "That human determination could overcome any tactical disadvantage. That 12 humans with a good position and strong motivation could stop an army." Cal finished his drink. "When we finally withdrew from Frost 7, Sergeant Kang sent us a farewell message. He thanked us for the interesting combat exercise and wished us good luck in our future battles." "He thanked you?" "He thanked us for helping his squad become better soldiers. He said the 43 days of combat had been excellent training for his people." Vex laughed, but it sounded tired. "They turned your siege into their training program?" "Yes. And the worst part was that Sergeant Kang invited us to come back anytime we wanted more training exercises. He said Echo Squad would be happy to provide realistic combat experience for our forces. That definitely sounds like psychological warfare, Gina said. It was not warfare. It was just Sergeant Kang being polite. He really thought we might want to practice combat against skilled opponents. How did your commanders react to the failure at Frost 7? They classified the entire operation. Officially, the attack on Frost 7 never happened. Too embarrassing to admit that 12 humans had stopped a full invasion force. But the story spread anyway. Stories like that always spread. Soldiers talk to other soldiers. By the end of the war, every unit in our military had heard about Echo Squad. The cantina had filled with more aliens as word spread that Kyle Vorthak was telling war stories. Veterans from different species sat at nearby tables, all listening carefully. Some nodded at familiar details, while others looked shocked by what they were hearing. Echo Squad taught us that humans do not give up, Kale said. But it was the Battle of Binary Stars where we learned that humans do not give up on anyone. Gina looked up from her notebook. Binary Stars? That was the big space battle, wasn't it? The biggest space battle of the war. 200 ships on each side fighting in the gravity well between twin stars. It lasted 18 hours and ended with both fleets badly damaged. Vex leaned forward. I remember the casualty reports from Binary Stars. Thousands of dead on both sides. Yes. And after 18 hours of fighting, both fleets were ready to withdraw and recover. Standard military procedure. Take your surviving ships and retreat to safe positions. Kale's 4 hands gestured as he spoke. Our fleet withdrew first. We had accomplished our tactical objectives and suffered acceptable losses. Time to leave and prepare for the next battle. But the humans didn't withdraw? Gina asked. The humans stayed. Their fleet was just as damaged as ours, their casualties just as heavy. But instead of retreating, they spread out across the battle zone and started searching through the debris. Searching for what? Survivors. Human survivors, yes, but also our survivors. Alien crew members from our destroyed ships, floating in space pods or clinging to wreckage. The cantina grew very quiet. Even aliens who had never fought humans seemed surprised by this. That makes no military sense, Vex said. After a major battle, you should secure your own forces first. Rescue operations come later, when the tactical situation is stable. That is what we thought too, Kyle said. But we were watching from long-range scanners as human ships ignored standard withdrawal procedures. They were flying into dangerous debris fields to search for life signs. Life signs from enemy ships. Life signs from any ships. Their captain, a human named Ray, sent a general broadcast on all frequencies. She announced that the human fleet was conducting search and rescue operations for all survivors regardless of species. Gina stopped writing. She announced it? On open channels where your forces could hear? Yes. Captain Ray told everyone, human and alien forces, that her ships would not attack any vessel involved in rescue operations. She essentially declared a temporary ceasefire for humanitarian reasons. Without authorization from her superiors? Without authorization from anyone. Captain Ray decided on her own that saving lives was more important than military advantage. An alien veteran at a nearby table spoke up. I was at Binary Stars, Medical Frigate, 12th Support Fleet. I remember that broadcast. Kale looked toward the speaker. What ship? Healing Light. We were retrieving our wounded from damaged vessels when the human rescue ships approached. Tell them what happened, Kale said. The medical veteran stood up and walked over to their table. He was a tall, thin alien with blue skin and 6 arms. I am Dr. Wren. I was Chief Medical Officer during that battle. Please, sit with us, Gina said. Dr. Wren sat down. The human rescue ships were small, fast vessels with powerful scanning equipment. They could detect life signs in wreckage that our sensors could not find. They had better rescue technology? Hyun asked. They had desperate rescue motivation, Dr. Wren corrected. Their ships were flying into debris fields that were too dangerous for normal rescue operations. Pieces of destroyed starships spinning at high velocity, radiation leaks, unstable gravity fields. But they went in anyway? They went in anyway. A human pilot named Dong made 7 trips into the most dangerous part of the debris field. 7 trips to rescue survivors from different ships. Kale nodded. I remember Pilot Dong. Our intelligence reports mentioned him specifically. Why? Gina asked. Because on his 4th rescue mission he found a life pod from one of our destroyers. 5 alien crew members, badly injured, life support failing. Dr. Wren continued the story. Pilot Dong's ship was already overloaded with human survivors. His life support was running at maximum capacity. Adding 5 more people would have endangered everyone on board. So he left the alien survivors behind? Gina asked. He transferred the human survivors to another rescue ship and took the aliens. Instead, Dr. Wren said, he gave up his own people to save enemies. That is impossible, Vex said. No military pilot would endanger his own crew to save enemy soldiers. Human pilots would, Kyle said, because to humans, survivors are not enemies. They are just people who need help. Pilot Dong made 3 more rescue runs after that, Dr. Wren said. Each time he prioritized the most seriously injured survivors, regardless of species. By the end of the day, his ship had rescued more aliens than humans. How did his superiors react? Gina asked. They gave him a medal, Kyle said. The humans gave medals to all their rescue pilots, rewarded them for saving enemy lives during combat operations. Your intelligence network monitored human military awards? Hyun asked. We monitored everything about human military culture. We were trying to understand what motivated their soldiers. The rescue operations at Binary Stars were completely outside our experience. Dr. Wren gestured to the cantina server for a drink. The strangest part was working alongside human medical teams. They had a lieutenant commander named Ina who coordinated rescue operations. What was strange about her? She treated our medical ships like allies instead of enemies, shared tactical information about survivor locations, coordinated search, patterns to avoid duplication, even offered to share medical supplies. During active combat operations? Gina asked. During active combat operations, Lieutenant Commander Ina was running rescue missions while her fleet was still fighting our reinforcements in the outer system. Kyle took a drink. That was when Our commanders realized we were dealing with a completely different kind of enemy, an enemy that would help us rescue our own people. Help you? Human rescue ships had better scanning equipment and faster engines. They could reach survivors that our ships could not. So they would find our people and then call our medical vessels to pick them up. They called your ships to rescue your own survivors? Yes, because their ships were already full of other survivors, and they thought our medical teams could provide better care for our own species. Dr. Wren nodded. Lieutenant Commander Ina sent detailed medical reports for every alien survivor her teams found. Injury assessments, treatment recommendations, priority ratings for medical care. She was doing medical triage for enemy wounded. She was doing medical triage for all wounded. Species did not matter to her, only the severity of injuries and the urgency of treatment needed. Vex shook his head. Our military psychologists must have been completely confused by this behavior. Confused is not a strong enough word, Kyle said. They declared the rescue operations at Binary Stars to be impossible and refused to include them in official battle reports. Impossible? Impossible, because no rational military force would sacrifice tactical advantage to save enemy lives. Our psychologists said it violated basic survival instincts. But it happened? It happened. And it kept happening throughout the war. Every major battle ended with human rescue operations that saved more alien lives than human lives. Gina looked up from her frantic note-taking. More alien lives? Yes. Because humans were better at survival during space battles. Better equipment, better training, better luck. But aliens who survived were usually more seriously injured and needed immediate rescue. So humans prioritized the most critically injured survivors? Always, Dr. Wren said. Human rescue doctrine was based on medical need, not military value. They would risk their best pilots to save enemy soldiers who might never fight again. That should have given you a huge advantage, Hyun said. All those rescued alien soldiers could return to combat. That was the problem, Kale said. Most of the aliens rescued by humans refused to fight them again. Refused? How do you fight someone who saved your life? How do you shoot at rescue? Ships that might contain the pilot who pulled you from a destroyed vessel? Dr. Wren nodded. My own ship was damaged during the battle. Human rescue teams helped evacuate our critical patients to their medical vessels. Better facilities, better doctors, better chance of survival. Enemy doctors treated your patients? Human doctors treated patients. They did not seem to understand the concept of enemy wounded. All injured people were just people who needed medical care. What happened to the alien patients in human medical facilities? Gina asked. They received the best medical care in the galaxy, Dr. Wren said. Better care than they would have received in their own military hospitals. And when they recovered, the humans arranged for prisoner exchanges to send them home. Prisoner exchanges? The humans wanted to make sure recovered patients could return to their families, Kale said. They negotiated complex diplomatic arrangements just to send healed enemy soldiers back to alien space. That seems counterproductive for their war effort. It was counterproductive. But it was also effective psychological warfare, even though they did not intend it as warfare. How? The cantina had become crowded with aliens listening to Kale's stories. Veterans from many different species had gathered, some standing when all the chairs were taken. The atmosphere was tense, as if everyone knew the next story would be the most important one. Kale sat quietly for several minutes, staring into his drink. His scales had turned almost black, a sign of deep stress in his species. The rescue operations taught us that humans fight wars differently than any other species, he said finally. But it was at Busan Station where we learned that humans think about war differently than anyone else in the galaxy. Gina looked up from her notebook. She had been writing for hours, and her hand was cramping. Busan Station was the final battle, wasn't it? The final battle. Humanity's last major military installation, orbiting their industrial world of New Kyoto. We had been fighting for 4 years, and we were finally winning. Kale's voice was barely above a whisper. The human fleet was destroyed. Their colonies were occupied. Their government was preparing to surrender. Busan Station was all they had left. Vex leaned forward. I remember the intelligence reports. Busan Station was supposed to be impregnable. It was impregnable. Massive defensive systems, thousands of soldiers, supplies for years of siege warfare. The humans had built it to be their final fortress. But you surrounded it? We surrounded it with the entire galactic fleet. 800 ships, 2 million soldiers, orbital bombardment platforms that could crack planets. The largest military force ever assembled. Dr. Wren shook his head. 2 million soldiers against one space station? High Command wanted to be certain. No more surprises like Echo Squad or binary stars. Overwhelming force to end the war quickly and completely. What was the human response? Gina asked. General Ho, the station commander, requested a meeting with our fleet admiral. Standard surrender negotiations, we thought. Finally, humans were being rational. Kyle took a long drink. The meeting was held in neutral space with diplomatic protocols. General Ho arrived with a small escort and full military honors. He was surrendering? He was negotiating, but not for surrender terms. He was negotiating for the safety of non-combatants. Non-combatants? Hyun asked. Alien civilians who had been living on human worlds during the war. Refugees, students, diplomats, traders. Maybe 50,000 aliens total, scattered across human space. Several aliens in the cantina made sounds of surprise. This detail had not been in the official war histories. General Ho said that human space was about to become very dangerous for alien civilians. He wanted to arrange safe passage for them to return to their home worlds. He was concerned about enemy civilians during surrender negotiations? Vex asked. He was not surrendering. He was warning us that Busan Station was going to self-destruct, and he wanted alien civilians evacuated from the blast zone first. The cantina became completely silent. Even the background music seemed to stop. Self-destruct? Gina asked. Busan Station had been designed as humanity's final fortress, but also as their final weapon. If they could not win the war, they would destroy themselves and take as many enemy ships as possible with them. That sounds like a reasonable military tactic, Dr. Wren said. It would have been reasonable, except for what General Ho said next. He told our admiral that the self-destruct sequence had already begun. Busan Station would explode in 6 hours. 6 hours? 6 hours to evacuate 50,000 alien civilians from the blast radius. General Ho said human ships would begin the evacuation immediately, but they could not rescue everyone in time. He asked for our help. Kyle's scales were now completely black. He asked us to help rescue alien civilians from the space station that was about to kill 2 million of our soldiers. That is impossible, Vex said. Why would he warn you about a weapon that could win the war for humans? Because there were innocent people who would die if he did not warn us. General Ho said that winning wars was not worth killing civilians, even enemy civilians. So he gave up humanity's best chance for victory to save alien lives? Not exactly. The situation was more complicated than that. Gina looked up from her frantic note-taking. More complicated how? Major Yoon, the station's special operations commander, had discovered something during the evacuation preparations. The self-destruct would not just destroy Busan Station. What else would it destroy? Everything in the system. The blast would chain react with the orbital facilities around New Kyoto. Weapons depots, fuel reserves, industrial complexes. The entire system would become uninhabitable. Including the planet? Including the planet. 3 billion human civilians lived on New Kyoto. They would all die when the industrial complexes exploded. The cantina was so quiet that Gina could hear her own heartbeat. General Ho knew that destroying Busan Station would kill 3 billion of his own people? She asked. General Ho knew that destroying Busan Station was the only way to stop our invasion fleet, but he also knew it would be genocide against his own species. So what did he do? He asked us to help evacuate human civilians, too. Several aliens in the cantina stood up suddenly, as if they needed to move to process what they were hearing. He asked the enemy fleet to help rescue the people his weapon was going to kill? Vex asked. Yes. General Ho said that military victory was not worth committing genocide, even against his own species. He would rather lose the war than murder 3 billion innocent people. That is insane, Dr. Wren said. He was giving up humanity's last chance to win. He was choosing to lose rather than become a mass murderer. And he asked us to help him save as many lives as possible before the explosion. What did your admiral say? Our admiral said no. Obviously. It was clearly a trick. Some kind of psychological warfare. Humans trying to make us lower our guard, or divide our forces. But it wasn't a trick? It was not a trick. Sergeant Yu, the station's communications officer, sent detailed technical specifications for the self-destruct system. Complete engineering data that proved the explosion would happen exactly as General Ho had described. He sent you the technical specifications for their ultimate weapon. He sent us the technical specifications so we could calculate evacuation, requirements, and coordinate rescue operations. Sergeant Yu wanted to make sure we had enough ships in the right positions to save as many people as possible. Kale ordered another drink with shaking hands. Our technical experts confirmed that the humans were telling the truth. Busan Station really was going to explode, and the explosion really would kill everything in the system. So, your admiral agreed to help with evacuations? Our admiral ordered the fleet to prepare for maximum tactical advantage when the humans detonated their weapon. Position ships to capture any human vessels that tried to escape and be ready to occupy the system. After the explosion cleared, he was going to let 3 billion civilians die? He was following standard military doctrine. The enemy's strategic weapon was not our responsibility. If humans wanted to commit genocide against their own people, that was their choice. But the evacuations happened anyway? Gina asked. Dr. Sayok, a human scientist, contacted individual ships in our fleet directly. He sent personal messages to alien crew members, asking for help with rescue operations. Personal messages? Dr. Sayok had been monitoring our communications during the war. He knew the names and backgrounds of aliens serving in our fleet. He sent customized messages to each crew member, asking them to think about what they would want if their own families needed rescue. That sounds like emotional manipulation, Hyun said. It was emotional manipulation. It was also effective. Dr. Seok's messages reached alien soldiers who had been rescued by humans during previous battles. They remembered binary stars and other rescue operations. And they decided to help? Individual ship commanders started breaking formation to assist with evacuations. Not following orders, just following their consciences. They remembered how humans had saved their lives and decided to return the favor. Vex nodded slowly. I heard rumors about ships going rogue during the final battle. Command tried to classify those reports. Half our fleet went rogue. Individual commanders making personal decisions to help rescue civilians instead of following tactical orders. That must have been chaos, Dr. Wren said. It was beautiful chaos. Human and alien ships working together to evacuate as many people as possible before the explosion. No coordination, no planning, just thousands of individual rescue operations happening simultaneously. How many people did you save? Gina asked. Almost everyone. 48,000 alien civilians, 2.9 billion human civilians. The largest evacuation in galactic history, accomplished in 6 hours by enemies working together. Almost everyone? Kyle was quiet for a long moment. General Ho stayed on Busan Station. He said the commander should go down with his ship. Major Yoon and Sergeant Yu stayed with him. They chose to die? They chose to make sure the evacuation continued until the last possible moment. General Ho kept coordinating rescue operations until Busan Station exploded. With him on it? With him on it. His last transmission was a message to both fleets, thanking everyone who had helped with the rescue operations. He said it had been an honor to work with such good people, regardless of species. The cantina was completely silent now. Many of the alien veterans had tears in their eyes. The cantina remained silent for several minutes after Kale finished the story of Busan Station. Alien veterans sat quietly, some staring into their drinks, others looking out at the stars through the large windows. The weight of what they had heard seemed to press down on everyone. Gina looked at her notebook, filled with pages of handwriting. Her hand was sore from writing so much, but she knew this interview was the most important work of her career. What happened after the war ended? She asked softly. Kale's scales were slowly returning to their normal green color, but his 4 eyes still held the distant look of someone remembering painful events. Everything changed, he said. The entire Galactic Alliance had to rebuild their understanding of warfare, psychology, and what it means to be civilized. Because of what humans had done, because of what humans had taught us. For thousands of years, galactic military doctrine was based on logical resource management. Fight for what you need. Retreat when costs exceed benefits. Surrender when defeat is certain. Vex nodded. Basic survival strategy. Every species follows those principles. Every species except humans, Kale said. Humans fought for abstract concepts that could not be measured or quantified. Honor, justice, compassion, duty, things that exist only in their minds but are more real to them than physical resources. Dr. Wren leaned forward. Our psychologists spent years after the war trying to understand human motivation. They called it the greatest scientific puzzle in galactic history. What did they discover? Hyun asked. That humans are not actually irrational, Kyle said. They are operating on a completely different logical system than other species. Where we calculate costs and benefits in terms of survival and resources, humans calculate costs and benefits in terms of moral and ethical outcomes. Moral logic instead of survival logic? Yes. To humans, dying for a good cause is better than living without purpose. Saving enemy lives is more important than winning battles. Protecting innocence is worth any personal cost. Gina looked around the cantina. How did the other species react to this discovery? Badly, said an alien veteran who had been listening from a corner table. He walked over to join the conversation. I am Commander Zek, formerly of the Hegemony Intelligence Division. We were tasked with studying human psychology after the war. What did you find? Gina asked. We found that humans have something we called moral imperatives, principles that override survival instincts. They will literally die rather than violate these principles. That sounds like a mental disorder, Hyun said. We thought so too at first. Our psychiatrists classified human moral behavior as a form of species-wide mental illness, but then we realized something disturbing. What? Human civilization was more stable and prosperous than any other civilization in the galaxy. Their mental illness had made them the most successful species we had ever encountered. Kale nodded. Before the war, humans had no significant military threats, no internal conflicts, no resource shortages. They had solved problems that plagued every other species. How? By caring about each other more than they cared about themselves, by making decisions based on what was right instead of what was profitable, by treating strangers like family and enemies like future friends. Commander Zek sat down at their table. My intelligence reports were classified for 10 years because our government did not want other species to know how superior human society was to our own. Superior how? Gina asked. No poverty, no homelessness, no preventable diseases, no discrimination based on species or origin. Humans had eliminated social problems that we considered natural and unavoidable. Through their moral imperatives, through their inability to ignore suffering even when it was not their responsibility. Humans see a problem and feel personally obligated to fix it, regardless of cost or inconvenience. Vex shook his head. That should make their society inefficient and resource poor. It made their society incredibly efficient and resource rich, Commander Zek said. When everyone works to help everyone else, productivity increases exponentially. When no one is left behind, everyone contributes to society's success. But that contradicts basic economic theory, Dr. Wren said. Human economics contradicts all our theories. They have something called a gift economy mixed with resource sharing. People work not just for personal benefit, but because they want to help their community. Kale took another drink. After the war, many alien worlds tried to copy human social systems. Most failed because other species could not replicate human moral imperatives. You can't just decide to care about strangers like family. Apparently not. It has to be genuine, instinctive, automatic. Humans do not choose to help others. They cannot choose not to help others. Commander Zek nodded. Our post-war studies showed that humans experience physical and emotional pain when they see others suffering. Their brains are wired to treat community welfare as personal welfare. That explains their behavior during the war, Gina said. It explains everything about humans, Kyle said. Why they rescued enemy soldiers, why they shared medical supplies with aliens, why they chose defeat rather than genocide. They literally cannot prioritize their own survival over the welfare of others. That must have been disturbing for your military leaders, Yun said. It was terrifying. Because it meant humans were not fighting us for territory or resources or even survival. They were fighting us because they thought we were hurting innocent people. Were you? Kyle was quiet for a moment. Yes. We were following standard military doctrine, which includes acceptable civilian casualties and resource appropriation from conquered territories. Normal warfare. But not normal to humans? To humans, there is no such thing as acceptable civilian casualties. Every innocent death is a personal failure, a moral catastrophe that must be prevented at any cost. Commander Zek leaned forward. Do you want to know the most disturbing thing we discovered about humans? What? They were right. Their moral system actually works better than ours. Societies that protect innocents and care for enemies are more stable, more prosperous, and more successful than societies based on pure self-interest. That contradicts everything we know about evolution and survival, Dr. Wren said. It contradicts everything we thought we knew. But human civilization proves that cooperation and compassion are more evolutionarily successful than competition and aggression. Vex shook his head. Our entire understanding of natural selection was wrong. Not wrong, just incomplete. We focused on individual survival and missed the importance of group survival. Humans evolved to succeed as a species, not just as individuals. Kyle gestured around the cantina. Look at this station. Nexus Prime exists because humans insisted on creating neutral space where all species could interact peacefully. Before humans, there was no such thing as neutral space. They created this place, they funded it, designed it, and convinced every major government to respect its neutrality. They gave up valuable strategic territory to create a place where former enemies could become friends. Why? Because humans believe that peace is more valuable than military advantage, because they think former enemies make the best allies. Commander Zek nodded. 15 years after the war, human space has become the most popular destination for alien immigrants. Millions of former enemy civilians now live in human colonies. They welcomed their former enemies as immigrants. They invited them. Official government programs to help war refugees resettle in human space. Free housing, education, medical care, job training, everything needed to build new lives. That seems like poor security policy, Hyun said. It seemed like poor security. Policy to us, too. But crime rates in human space are lower than anywhere else in the galaxy. When people are treated well, they behave well. Gina looked up from her notebook. What about the human veterans? How did they handle the transition to peace? Kale's expression became very sad. That is the most difficult part of this story. Many human veterans suffer from what they call moral injury. Moral injury? Psychological damage caused by being forced to hurt people during the war. Human soldiers feel guilty about killing enemies, even in legitimate combat situations. They feel guilty for winning battles. They feel guilty for causing death, even when death was necessary for survival. Human minds are not designed for warfare, even though humans are very good at it. Dr. Wren shook his head. That explains why so many human veterans refuse to discuss their war experiences. We thought it was military secrecy. It is shame. Humans are ashamed of being good at violence, even when violence was the only option. They see war as a personal moral failure, not a military necessity. What about alien veterans? Gina asked. How did you handle the transition? Badly, Kyle admitted. Most of us have what humans call post-traumatic stress disorder, but our trauma is not from combat experiences. What is it from? From realizing that we were wrong about everything. About war, about enemies, about what it means to be civilized. We have nightmares about human kindness, not human violence. Commander Zek nodded. I have recurring dreams about the rescue operations. At binary stars, watching humans risk their lives to save people who had been trying to kill them an hour earlier. That traumatized you? The interview had lasted for hours. Gina's notebook was full. Hyun's recording device showed maximum capacity, and the cantina was packed with aliens who had stayed to listen to every word. The atmosphere was heavy with the weight of shared understanding. Kale sat quietly for a moment, his 4 hands wrapped around his empty glass. His scales had returned to their normal green color, but his eyes still held the distant look of someone processing difficult memories. Is there anything else you want people to know about the human war? Gina asked. Yes, Kale said. There is something very important that people need to understand about humans, something that makes them more dangerous now than they were during the war. More dangerous? But the war is over. The war is over. But humans are still human. And humans in peacetime are just as unpredictable as humans in wartime. Commander Zek nodded. He is right. Our ongoing intelligence studies show that human behavior in civilian situations is just as confusing as their military behavior. How so? They apply their moral imperatives to everything. Business, politics, social interactions, even entertainment. They cannot turn off their need to help others and do the right thing. Vex leaned forward. Can you give examples? Human businesses, Kale said. They make decisions based on what is good for their workers and customers, not just what is profitable. They will lose money rather than cause harm to others. That should make them economically weak, Dr. Wren said. It makes them economically dominant. When customers trust businesses to care about their welfare, they become loyal customers. When workers know their employers care about them, they work harder and better. Human politics is even more confusing, Commander Zek said. Their leaders actually try to solve problems instead of just gaining power. They pass laws that help other species, not just humans. They govern for the benefit of aliens? Gina asked. They govern for the benefit of everyone in their territory, regardless of species. Alien immigrants in human space have the same rights and protections as human citizens. That seems like it could be exploited by hostile forces. That is what we thought too. But it is very difficult to be hostile toward people who are genuinely trying to help you. Human kindness is an extremely effective defense against aggression. An old alien veteran at a nearby table called out, "Tell them about the pack bonding incidents." Kale looked toward the speaker. Ah, yes, the pack bonding incidents. This is what makes humans truly dangerous in peacetime. Pack bonding, Hyun asked. Humans form emotional attachments to anything and anyone, not just their own species, but aliens, artificial intelligences, robots, even inanimate objects. They cannot control this tendency. That sounds harmless, Gina said. It is not, harmless. When humans pack bond with you, they become personally invested in your welfare. Forever. They will go to extraordinary lengths to help anyone they consider part of their pack. Commander Zek nodded. There have been incidents where human civilians have started wars with criminal organizations because those organizations threatened alien friends. Started wars? Humans who discovered that their alien neighbors were being extorted by crime syndicates. Instead of reporting it to authorities, they organized vigilante groups to hunt down the criminals. Civilian humans became vigilantes to protect alien friends? Civilian humans became extremely dangerous vigilantes. They applied military-level planning and resources to civilian problems. Several major crime organizations have been completely destroyed by human civilians who were angry about threats to their alien friends. Vex shook his head. Human civilians have access to military-level resources? All humans have access to whatever resources they need to protect their pack. Other humans will provide money, equipment, expertise, even illegal weapons if necessary. That sounds like a breakdown of law and order. It is actually extremely effective law enforcement. Crime rates in areas with mixed human and alien populations are essentially zero. Criminals know that harming aliens will trigger human pack bonding responses. What does that mean in practice? Gina asked. It means that if you hurt someone a human cares about, you will have to deal with all humans everywhere, Kyle said. Human pack bonding creates a galaxy-wide mutual defense network that cannot be legal under galactic law. It is not legal, but it is effective. And human governments tend to ignore illegal activities when those activities are protecting innocent people. Dr. Wren leaned forward. Are you saying that humans will break laws to help others? Humans will break any law that conflicts with their moral imperatives. Legal systems that allow innocent suffering are seen as flawed systems that need to be fixed or ignored. How do human governments maintain order with citizens who ignore laws? They maintain order by making sure their laws align with human moral values. Laws that protect people are followed automatically. Laws that harm people are disobeyed automatically. Commander Zek nodded. Human legal systems are based on justice rather than authority. Citizens obey laws because they agree with them, not because they fear punishment. That should create chaos, Hyun said. It creates the most stable and peaceful societies in the galaxy. When laws are just, people follow them willingly. When laws are unjust, people work to change them. What about aliens living in human space? How do they handle these systems? Most aliens love living in human space, Kyle said. They feel safer there than in their own homeworlds. Human pack bonding means that alien residents are automatically protected by the entire human community. But some aliens find it disturbing, Commander Zek added. They are not used to being cared about by strangers. Human kindness can be overwhelming for species that are used to individualistic societies. Overwhelming how? Humans will notice if you seem sad and ask what is wrong. They will offer help with problems that are not their responsibility. They will invite you to social gatherings and treat you like family. That sounds nice. It is nice. But it is also intense. Humans care about you whether you want them to or not. There is no way to opt out of human compassion. Vex laughed, but it sounded tired. I have been living on this station for 5 years. Every day, humans ask me how I am feeling and if I need anything. Every day, they offer to help with problems I have not even mentioned. And slowly, I have started to care about them too. Human pack bonding is contagious. Spending time with humans makes you more human-like. Is that bad? It is confusing. I was trained to be a soldier, to prioritize my own survival and the success of my unit. But now I worry about human friends, and I want to help them with their problems. You have developed human-like moral imperatives? I have developed something like them, not as strong as natural human morality, but stronger than normal alien self-interest. Kyle nodded. This is happening to aliens throughout the galaxy. Extended contact with humans changes how we think about ourselves and others. That sounds like cultural contamination, Gina said. That is what our governments call it. But the aliens who experience it call it enlightenment. They say that caring about others makes life more meaningful. Do you agree? Kale was quiet for a long moment. Yes, I agree. Caring about humans has made my life more complicated, but also more worthwhile. How? Because when you care about someone, everything you do matters more. Your actions affect people you love, so you try harder to make good choices. And that is dangerous? It is dangerous because it spreads. Every alien who becomes friends with humans starts to care about other people, too. Human morality is viral. Commander Zek leaned forward. That is the real warning about humans. They are not dangerous because they will hurt you. They are dangerous because they will make you care about hurting others. And once you care about others, you cannot go back to caring only about yourself. You become responsible for the welfare of everyone around you. That sounds like a good thing. It is a good thing. But it is also a fundamental change in how you see the universe. You stop being an individual focused on personal survival and become part of a community focused on mutual welfare. Is that what happened to you during the war? That is what happened to all of us during the war. We started as enemies trying to defeat humans. We ended as people trying to understand how to be worthy of human friendship. Gina looked around the cantina at all the alien veterans who had listened to this interview. What do you want people to take away from these stories? Kyle stood up slowly, his 4 arms stretching. I want people to understand that humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because they are strong or smart or technologically advanced. Why then? Because they make you want to be better than you are. Because they show you what kindness looks like when it is backed by unshakable determination. Because they prove that caring about others is not weakness. It is the ultimate strength. And that frightens you? It frightens me because it works. Because human methods are clearly superior to everyone else's methods, but most species cannot simply decide to become like humans. So what should people do with this information? Try to understand humans before you interact with them. Be prepared for them to care about your welfare in ways that might seem strange or overwhelming. And remember that if humans ever consider you part of HFY,